Anybody else want to do a quick hello introduction? I see David Lewis up there.
Yeah, from Zebra. Hi, Bart.
Good to see your name, hear your voice. All right, it's about 4 minutes into the time. I made a short list. If you know me, I took debate in high school, and I like good fights. Whether it's an argument or seeing hummingbirds fight. I like seeing it and hearing it. And you know, I've been schooled before. I know how to go and say, "Wow, I realized that I was wrong," and go learn. So I don't mean to be the end all be all about both SolidWorks and Creo. I will say that a good argument about Mac and PCs, um, Democrats, Republicans, whatever it is, you know, we can learn from each other, and it's good practice to kind of talk about these things with each other. Um, what's the first thing that I think about when I try to make a comparison like this, and you might not know this, but I do week-long comparisons. People get kind of upset or in their head about how much money they're paying for one or the other, and they want a sort of expert witness like Design Engine to say, hey, you know what? Tell us, can SolidWorks do what we need to do? Usually the answer is yes. However, right, there's a catch. It's a little slower. If you have it in your mind to that, wow, wouldn't it be cool if it had this sort of module? Creo's got a module for doing stress analysis on carbon fiber. SolidWorks does not. So if you have it in your mind that you want something new, SolidWorks may not have that. It's a mid-range tool. That's how I define mid-range tool. So it's a little bit easy to beat up on a mid-range tool. So it's, just giving it that, it's not fair. All right, so I made a short list, and I don't know about, I like to hit problem solving or arguing or whatever it is we want to call it from a psychological perspective. So Freud was the psychoanalyst that said that humans like to make a big deal out of small differences. I think he was referring about the difference between Pakistanis and Indian people, how they worshiped God a little bit differently and ate they ate differently. And although they're the same culture, they decided to always be at battle. And I think that's what we are as humans, always at battle. Some people appreciate the battle, some people don't. If I'm wrong about a rifle, I go and Google it and I'm like, wow, okay, how big is that? You know, all right. So I learned, right? And I grew up with rifles, but like I said, any good argument should be motivated to learn, you know, um, not name calling and getting kind of emotional about it. Really, it's not what I intend. Um, so I talked about the different modules inside of SolidWorks has a module, right? It's got an FEA utility and it's got the base package of SolidWorks that has sheet metal SolidWorks in it or surfacing in it, when SolidWorks first came out, it really didn't have any of that stuff. So it really sounds bad to say you're an expert in SolidWorks since 1997. The software was really not capable, you know. So at some point, each 20 years into it, they started to really step up the game for software programmers say expose the code. They have to write into the code. 2014 is when they had the conic tool. So what I want to do is just kind of start in sketcher mode. You know, my probably only claim to fame is I have sort of a recollection of when the conic tool was new. All right, so I can get into Sketch. By the way, SolidWorks is significantly slower in Sketcher mode. And if you take that week-long class with me, you start to realize, wow, Creo's a lot faster than I thought it was, because that's really all what I'm about is speed modeling and being efficient and smarter and better and faster, whatever it is. So I just drew a box, and to state the obvious, it automatically dimensioned everything in the box. SolidWorks has a function like that too. When I do a talk at a SolidWorks user conference, people are like kind of blown away. They didn't know. So people argue with me and they don't even know SolidWorks. That's like the typical political debate, right? So SolidWorks has the user interface up. It's a little bit um, you know, you can save a template and have these things automatically turn on. I can fetch a sketch and build a box. Okay. Well, the typical person coming from Creo to SolidWorks or SolidWorks to Creo finds the other tool really annoying. That's human nature. So what I try to do is get people out of their head about going from one direction to the other, because usually it's not even up to us. So this fully defined sketch here lets me automatically dimension the geometry. Most people don't know that. I, so pretty similar. So if I wanted to move this sketch around, I can drag a geometry and move it. What SolidWorks won't let me do is lock the thing. Most MEs that take training with Design Engine, they lock every dimension and justify it in some weird way. So I'm just not that kind of person. I don't I like to run the system kind of stock. But here I locked two dimensions and I can move the geometry around. That makes me so much quicker and more nimble when I'm trying to come up with a crude concept that's 90% there. I can just kind of start to drag stuff around. I talked a little bit about the conic. I'm kind of loud on on the internet, and I was kind of I would say well known for complaining about SolidWorks over the years. I'm not that person anymore because they stepped up their game. 2007, the software was pretty lax. And if you remember it not being lax, it's probably because you weren't very good at what you do, right? Now we are. We're 15 years into it. So this conic has a row value that allows me to speak ergonomically to a handle. If I'm designing something for Kohler, that conic has to be there. So how could you do a conic in SolidWorks? How could you be ergonomically correct in SolidWorks when it wasn't there? I don't mean to sound too negative here, but man, it's really hard to explain to people that don't get it. So here what I'm doing is I'm putting a 3-degree spline, y equals x to the 3, and I'm going in Creo, and I'm going to make it go tangent to one and the other. All right, that's a 3-degree curve, and it kind of looks like the spline. I can, pretending I'm in SolidWorks, so I can kind of get the same shape and be sort of ergonomically correct. The problem with this is these geometries have too much math. MEs tend to like, when would you want to go small? Always go big. In this case, I'm getting an inflection in the geometry, which is one reason why we need a conic, because the specular highlight on that conic can always project in a certain way. So conics. I would never use an ellipse in a production model because it doesn't have the conic. Spline, I'd like to have 5 7-degree splines inside of Creo sketcher mode that may be coming. I can trim entities at will. I can write text. SolidWorks has some limitations inside of sketcher mode, and they don't put everything up in the ribbon available to you. You know, um, SolidWorks would call this power trim. Delete, dynamically delete section entity is what PTC used to call it. We can divide entities. So SolidWorks can do that too. This is really cool. What I'm going to do, SolidWorks doesn't do this. And once you figure out how to use these tools, you're way more in tune to using them. right? So I'm going to go ahead and just extrude this geometry. Um, if you notice what I did when I extruded that geometry, let me build another sketch and talk about it. So I'm building a sketch on top of here, middle click, right hold down, check out, right hold down, reach for extrude. PTC has done, as much as one might want to complain, PTC has done a pretty incredible job making the system extraordinarily efficient. If you were to consider taking a class with design engine that's Creo update oriented, I can promise you 15 to 20%. I usually tell people 30%, but that seems too hard to believe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this point anywhere in my screen. That point matures to being an axis. So if I need to get a round post to trap inside of that square hole, that's pretty handy. All right, so I'm just going to delete these other points. SolidWorks doesn't have that. You got to, well, most people don't care because they would just do it old school like they've been doing it since it was 1997. We would offset a datum plane from here, offset a datum plane from here. We can put one in the middle if you want, which is relatively new. And then the intersection of that is where the axis goes, right? Uh, Most people, that's how they do it in Creo. They don't know Creo's got all these cool new tools. SolidWorks still can't do it. So what I've done is I've inside the sketch, I put this point, which matured to an axis. And if you want it to be in the middle, we can use our center line. So this right here, what I'm doing is I'm automatically connecting the midpoint. SolidWorks does that one. I'm going to basically delete this box for a second just to slam it back down onto the table here. So I've got a reference here that I'm going to delete. SolidWorks has a button in it that says automatically create references, but it works about 30% of the time. It's consistent in how it works, so it seems intentional, right? So I'm picking here, and it fetched this edge automatically. Now, I won't mention any company names, but when I go into a company and do a Creo update training, there's a lot of antiquated crap in the config.profile that turns cool stuff like this off because they're coming from SolidWorks and it doesn't work in SolidWorks anyway. So I sound kind of upset, but I would say the bane of my existence is mitigating all the antiquated stuff in the config.profile. I I like to say I can tell. I'm sure there's can people that manage the config in the talk, or maybe they'll hear it online. But most people, I think, in that position were excited about being, possibly being the expert within an organization. And 20 years later, the software's changed a lot, but they still have those things in their config setting. So go back to my, one more thing. And, I could probably spend an hour in Sketcher mode, and with 20 years on Creo, you wouldn't get bored. I promise you. Um, Perimeter. Has anybody played with this? There's nothing like that in SolidWorks, right? So if I don't know my analogy, you might make fun of me. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of strip some of this stuff out. My father gave me a bunch of fence. All I got to do is come over and get it, and I can put it up in my backyard. So I'm trying to organize a plot so I can understand how I got a certain number of fence. What can I do with that? So what I'm going to do is highlight all the dimensions and reach for this perimeter tab and pick one dimension that I want to be parametric. Right. I'm maybe getting I need to read the notes at the bottom. So I'm picking all the geometry. I hit perimeter, select dimension to be driven. I'm picking one, middle click. Says the varying dimension is invalid. Try that again. Perimeter. Just picking a random dimension. I'm getting something over here. Pick items. I don't know why it wasn't letting me make a window around it. What error is it giving me? Regenerate. I pre-select, right? Hit parameter, select a dimension to be, all right, now it's working. I don't know. Right. So what it did is it changed this technology comes from a software that was an acquisition from PTC called Direct or what used to be called ME30. And what it did is it let me change what's parametric. The perimeter is parametric. So if I change this to 1100, it changed the number that I wanted to be varying. SolidWorks doesn't have anything like that. Um, little things, right? I, I think people would attend a talk that I do because there's always kind of fun stuff to learn. I'm looking for my notepad. Did I close it? I think I did. Um, Subdivisional modeling. I don't know. I've been talking about that quite a bit the last month. SolidWorks doesn't have a module for subdivisional modeling. I'm only going to spend 4 minutes on this, but if you don't know what sub D is, it's pretty cool. Um, I'm I'm a big proponent of these tools. I'm just going to highlight the whole thing, turn it to soft, and if I want to turn this into something, uh, I can you know sharpen it up, you know continue to edit the geometry. I'm currently using this to model cybernetic geometry for various manufacturers, and it's pretty wild how close I can get to modeling a face and hands, and with a specific character. So this sub D modeling tool, nothing like that in SolidWorks. And like everything, there's a gray area. Um, like in current politics, it's black and white, right? Everything's gray, but we forget. So you could get a module, a plugin. SolidWorks itself doesn't make a sub D utility, but they offer a plugin. You can buy one, right? Um, we talked about locking dimensions and import data doctor. There's one. Um, I teach a 2-day import data doctor class, and I don't know how much experience you guys have playing with import data doctor, but if something doesn't come in, it can be kind of frustrating. Import data doctor gives me absolute and unbridled control to delete surfaces and rebuild them all inside of import data doctor, and you can collapse that whole anything that you build outside of data doctor inside of the geometry. Does anybody consider themselves expert? Well, we all know we can learn some, but um, it's powerful stuff. Does anybody want to see anything on import data doctor? Or um, there's nothing like it in SolidWorks. The the passive aggressive joke is SolidWorks just imports better and it doesn't need it. That's funny, not true, but I like it. I'll buy it. If you need an out, that's what I give you. Um,
Yeah, we use Data Doctor quite a bit between alias from ID models to start
whose
modifying
voice
in
is that?
Creo. This is Brad here.
Yeah. So I was in 1993 and 94 using imports from Alias at Motorola to bring geometry in for industrial design. And so it's pretty exciting to have the tool's a bit clunky, but it's pretty exciting to have the ability to build anything you want inside of the step file. Of course, we have to maintain specific integrities. We don't want to change something that ID might have us want it to lock. I've taught that class to Harley, um, you know, Kenworth, Oakley. I probably teach it 5 or 6 times a year. And there's a
I
lot
find
to
it powerful that you can like view original surface and maybe see a full-size quilt that was trimmed to be able to use that to build
and
into more
untrim. You can
geometry.
untrim inside of the tool.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
it blows my mind what they thought to put in there. So I'm just kind of scrolling down to my import data doctor class. Um, let's see. So I usually teach a reverse engineering workshop where there's 4 2-day classes crammed into 5 days. Import data doctor and using Rex are part of that. And when you do take something that's faceted and finagle it in a way, it usually comes in pretty dirty. We say it doesn't hold water, so we use import data doctor to clean it up just a little further. So um, yeah, I don't know. I was going to grab something kind of quick and dirty to show you. This is an alias import that I built, and my intention is to untrim it here. I'm just going to drag it to my desktop and in Creo, open it. Um, was that a step file or an IGES file? Usually I do an IGES file, but I don't quite remember what it was. I do the IGES file because it's a little dirtier and it gives me stuff to kind of struggle with. Desktop. Yeah, it must have been an IGES file. So I should be able to hit the letter I here and it automatically go to IGES. Little things like that I keep trying to remind PTC to do. I'm just going to grab one of these random files here. If you don't hit, this is a good one to add to your config setting. Hit use template. If you don't hit use template, you don't have any data planes. And if you end up needing to build a detail drawing out of this thing, it can be a bit of a challenge, right? You got to go to insert, rename the thing, run a script. So you've got your windshield geometry necessary. It's just use template avoids that 20 minutes of effort. So I'm just going to go open, reach for the letter I. Doesn't work. Just grab one randomly, hit use template. Now I could build a drawing out of this thing if I was required to, or assemble it in some way, or remodel it parametrically. So import data doctor lets me get in here and see things that may or may not be helpful. I'm just kind of picking stuff to delete. And here, I'm just going to delete some of these curves. Usually we don't specify that we want to export curves, but if I'm taking something from Rhino or Alias and going to remodel it, I usually ask for the native data so I can use Alias to export it. That way I can export exactly what I need to remodel it. And when I say remodel it, I usually mean parametrically. And most people know you can't do that. So here, I'm inside a data doctor and I just built a boundary blend, you know. That's pretty unheard of. And if I were to keep going here, look, you can build curves too. Hold the control key down. Yeah, and it's a 2-day class, and I've got 30 minutes to chat about this stuff, so I'm not going to keep going. But if you build something outside of Data Doctor, here let me rip some stuff off of here, and check out. If you come out of here and build it outside of Data Doctor because maybe you like how it works out here better, right? I've got to close this geometry off with whatever 4-part boundary I have available to my workflow. I'll do that this way. Merge these two together, whatever you do. Here I got one more surface to do. So what I'm doing is I'm stacking up boundaries outside of this stuff. I remember in 1994, I was working at one of the industrial design firms in Chicago, giving my age away. And we were built stuff all the time. If we had import data doctor, it would have took me 30 seconds or 40 minutes at most, not 20 hours. So this is a trip. I'm going to highlight all these things and reach for collapse, which closes everything inside of the import. Now, because I didn't merge them ahead of time, it's going to show them up. It's going to show these things as unmerged entities. This is how you merge an import data doctor. It collapsed. What, did I just make a solid? Yeah, import data doctor is badass. Nothing like that in SolidWorks. I don't mean to be too hard on SolidWorks. It's a mid-range tool, so I might sound kind of negative. I don't mean it's just easy punching bag, you know. And usually when I'm having an intelligent argument with somebody about the difference between SolidWorks and Creo, it usually gets them very upset. And now I'm poking at them. Quit being emotional. I think engineers, that's why Spock is such a great character. He's the typical unemotional male mechanical engineer. And unfortunately, people get kind of one of my coworkers gets so upset when I start pointing out all the user interface issues in SolidWorks. He gets pretty upset. And of course, I just poke at him. Quit being emotional. You didn't design the software. And that's not helpful. I know. I'm just being mean. All right. So this, so if I'm taking a class and I'm a SolidWorks advocate, if the instructor can't address my attitude and get me out of my head about learning not wanting to learn Creo, then that's a pretty bad instructor. This is one of the things that I do to get people out of their head, right? So we're going to build, I don't know how many talks I've done for 25 years at these Creo user conferences. But I've probably done something similar to this. So instead of coming up to the user interface, I'm just going to right hold down and fetch things. That's so much faster. But as humans, we tend to not gravitate towards things that are new. We don't like things that are new, you know. So yeah, so I've got a square, an arc, a straight line. I'm going to build a circle, random geometries. Remember, so this is my psychological trick to get people out of their head, quit whining. Let's learn Creo, right? Creo coming from SolidWorks Learn to Design course. Now I'm going to do something a little weird. I'm going to come over and create a new file with the same stuff on it. Okay, I'll just do one, right? Flip back over to my first one. Let's see, I'll take this guy and build a sweep. So in SolidWorks, when you build a sweep, you build a trajectory. You have to build a datum plane. I'm going to do it pretending I'm in SolidWorks. You build a datum plane normal to the trajectory. I clicked the curve to make it normal. So far, it's the same. And then I build a sketch over here. And pretty much every document that I've seen where some smart engineer at a company is trying to convince their manager they should quit Creo and go to SolidWorks, it's after looking at that PDF and making fun of them a little bit, it's pretty clear that they don't know SolidWorks or Creo because they're building it wrong, right? So this is how you go about it and then build a sweep. So what people get annoyed about is Creo doesn't have a sketch. It's got the sweep embedded in the feature, right? So that if you're learning something new, that's kind of annoying. How is that powerful? I can copy and paste the damn thing. I'm sorry to use that French, but this is how we got to get people. Most people don't know you can do this in Creo. I remember working at Motorola in 1997 at Boynton Beach, and we copied things, all the pagers back then. We'd copy all the features out of the pager and put it into a brand new pager. 1 hour, I could build a new pager in surfacing, and the next hour I'd copy all the features, 45 B-side geometries into the other one using Control C, Control V was new in 2001, Wildfire 1, but you could still pull menus and copy and paste. So here, I'm going to pick that sweep, Control C, and go to the other window and Control V. Right? That's cheating. Now, once you practice that a little bit, you kind of quit complaining about it's harder to go back to SolidWorks once you learn some of these basics. So I can take all the features if you want, Control C, Control V. I'm just hitting the middle button. Right? There happens to be two right here on top of each other, but you get it. And anybody want to tell us what you're thinking? Have you seen me demo that? Is that all? Tell me that's not new to you.
I use that a lot.
You
Actually
can't
use
do that in
for even
SolidWorks.
transferring over sketches too. Love using that, just like a copy from a reference step file, bring it into the new model, and I could just have like a,
Whose voice is that?
oh, that's me, Ben.
Oh, yeah. So it's just amazing how like people get in their head about these things, whatever it is, Mac, PC, whatever debate you got. If there's some workflow that you could do in the other tool, embrace it, you know? Um, I, I, I think it was 2008. I was giving a talk at a world conference at PTC World or whatever. And I had the whole room full of PTC applications engineers in the back. They were there to hear my SolidWorks jokes. I had prepared a whole bunch of them, and um, um, I said, "You guys are here for my SolidWorks jokes. Actually, I'm not going to give any SolidWorks jokes because I like SolidWorks now." And they looked at me funny, and I said, "Yeah, because I get paid by the hour. It takes me longer to get the work done." That was my joke, right? But it seems kind of annoying to say, but if you take a Creo update training from me, I can make you 30% faster. If you take a SolidWorks update training, I could probably make you 20% faster. But SolidWorks is still 30% slower than Creo. And if you don't believe me, let's play with it and try it, you know? And speed's not everything. For the bean counter on your team, it's maintenance may be cheaper in SolidWorks, right? But I think the expense is my salary times 20 people times every hour of the year. So I think it's more expensive, right? SolidWorks, but you know, the the tool is what it is. I'm eager to keep playing with Paste Special and share some tricks in our Learn to Design course. We push people pretty hard to do consider playing with try Paste Special and get it to fail, and then how do you get it to work anyway? So that part I'm skipping.
Bart, I got a question for
Copy
you.
and paste and Paste Special. Go ahead.
This is Dan. I use the copy and paste going from the ECAD, like a board with all the mounting holes and whatnot that coming from the ECAD side. But I have to specify this same body for the holes and then the three planes in order for it to show up where I want to.
So that would be Paste
easier way?
Special. So we can do that too.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's just a little different workflow. I got time.
Because sometimes their planes aren't exactly pointing the same direction,
Yeah.
so then I can adjust.
That's always the challenge is making apples and apples, and we're often given apple juice, right? So
So if I
here's
don't do special, is it as quick as what you just did with those
yeah,
holes?
yeah.
Okay.
It's mind-numbing cool. All right, so what I've got here is a wafer, and I've got the datum plane on the other side and this datum plane on the other side. So I'm being mindful about precisely what my references are, which we certainly can't do when we're trying to cannibalize something from a coworker's model. I've got 45 minutes to complete a new look. And I think I can copy my coworker's ribs out of his model because it's about the same size. And he built it with different planes. Yeah. So yeah, it's all that's usually our challenge. But if you play with it on simple examples, you get really good at managing fail mode on a complex geometry. In that Motorola example from the pager, 1997 Boynton Beach, the coworkers were we solved some problem really quick, and they were kind of like wow, okay. Now copy the B-side geometry over. So they left for lunch, and I'm like, oh, I think I could do it. There's a copy and paste. So what I did is I copied all 47 features out of the rib, out of the ribs out of the pager, and pasted it into my geometry, and it failed on feature 12. Then it dawned on me, what if I loosen up all the features in the geometry and have everything dimensioned to a point or a coordinate system? And then I copied all 47 features, and it failed on feature 37. That was the feature I forgot to redefine to go to the coordinate system or a point. And then all 47 features came in the third try. So don't give up. If you can get one feature to work, explore getting two features to work. If you can get two features to work, you could probably get all 47 if they're all through next, right? So that was something that SolidWorks couldn't do in 2007. All right, let me just think through this. So I just created a shell, and I'm going to go back to my other thought. I'm going to create a datum plane. What I'm getting ready to demo, I could write up in a forum, and nobody even knew what I was talking about. I had to create a video back in those days. It was hard to make a video. Screen grabs, right? Here, I'm dragging this in the other direction, and I'm going to right hold down on the dot and say to next. Some people are like blown away that you can do that in Creo. It's always been that way. 1993. What SolidWorks, that was new in 2008 because I put up I don't know, what do you say? Put up 100 issues that I had with SolidWorks. And I got in some pretty good arguments with people, and it dawned on me in hindsight that the person I was arguing with was a UI developer at SolidWorks. That they fixed 40% of the complaints I had. This was new in 2008 because I could articulate through example what happened, you know. Now if the datum goes too high, it fails, right? And through next becomes infinity. So when I teach a plastic part design class, this is part of the class. Everything's got to be through next, because then your top-down design model can just change over and over and over. ID guys don't want to stop changing stuff, and your ribs don't have to fail. It's kind of a beautiful thing. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Most people don't have time to take training. My goal is to help people work more efficiently, and not everybody buys into it. Let's see. All right, so I'm going to grab not a datum plane, but the side of the part, and I'm just going to build an ear. And I'm going to try to talk through my process on how I learn, because I think that's key, right? I'm going to lock that one dimension. That way I can drag this thing back and forth and be kind of smart about it. And I'm going to take the protrusion to go the other way. Now I'm going to highlight the two features and hit Control C on my keyboard, and then hit Control Shift and V. This advanced configuration, and then turn the dependency off, and then hit OK. And I'm just going to hit the middle button and be done with it. Usually when I demo this type of stuff at the Badger conference, somebody in the front of the room will say, "Can you go a little slower?" Ironically, all I'm doing is hitting the middle button, and that was new in 2001, and people, the 2001 release, middle button worked, So here I got this paste. All right, so I got one to work, or count the sketch too. Now let's put a full round on the top of this thing. So I'm holding the control key down, hit a round, right hold down, reach for full round. Let's think about the logic of why that might fail if I try to copy and paste that right down upon itself. Control C, Control Shift V. Ben is probably rolling his eyes. This is all review. Ben, did you take the learn to design or just surfacing?
I think you showed it in one of the surfacing classes.
Yeah. Okay, so here I'm dragging this thing back and forth, but I pasted it right square down upon itself. It didn't fail because I thought it might, right? Pretending I haven't done this before. I thought it might fail because the edge is consumed with the other round, but it's not. In this case, it seems to work. Now I'm going to try one more thing. Now this one's got to fail. I'm going to put an axis at the intersection of the cylindrical face. Okay. And this is something I don't often do is I played the Thomas Edison method. I change one thing and expect a different result. In this case, I'm doing two things, and that's probably a bit of a mistake, but for sake of time, I'm going to put a hole through both of those, and my hole is now fully constrained because inside of it, I'm looking at an axis as well. For some reason, I feel compelled to say through all. This one's going to fail at the axis. The challenge for my process or thinking process is to guess where it might fail. And if you can duplicate a failure in a very specific way like that, there's something to learn from that. Now we can come up with a different way to do it. Control C, Control Shift V, right? I'm trying to do the same thing each time. Middle click, middle click. Okay. And look, it in fact fails exactly where I hoped it would or thought it might. It doesn't know how to organize to the top of the cylindrical wall. SolidWorks can't do anything like this. So it's, like I say, easy to beat up on the SolidWorks folks. Usually they say, oh, but the user interface. I'm like, it's probably not cool to say this, but there's discrepancies in everything. You'll find spelling errors in books, chronological issues in a book. And I think SolidWorks has more user interface issues than Creo. I've been pointing out user interface stuff at Creo. Sometimes they fix it, sometimes they don't. But my point is, it's probably weighted where Creo's a little better. Maybe it used to not be. I don't know. So here I've got sketch. So all that's worked. It copy and pasted things. It allowed me to copy and paste things that worked, right? Because I can anticipate failure, I might have a workflow to make this stuff work anyway. Control C. Instead of hitting Control Shift V, think about the logic here is this sketch was, remember I used this as a sketch plane? What if I pre-select that like we do in Creo and hit Control V? Whistle, check out of it, right? So if SolidWorks can't do anything like this, does that sound like a broken record? Let's try something else. What if I could paste it on that wall? Control V. My pattern class, 2 days. One of my coworkers, when I showed him the pattern class, he was like, well, some of those aren't patterns. Yeah, it's copy and paste special and then pattern that. I think some of the coolest patterns I've seen are on the Contigo water bottles. 2 contractors came from Contigo right before it was announced that Newell Rubbermaid was going to buy them. And they took night training to learn how to do patterns for those things. And when it came time to announce the acquisition from Newell, typically when there's an acquisition, they lay off all the managers, whatever, and they just want the intellectual property. And I told one of the managers at Newell, man, you should check these guys out. They paid for the class themselves. They didn't work at Contigo, but they're doing all the cool stuff, and they both got jobs at Newell. I feel good about that. All right, so thoughts, comments? Does anybody want to throw out what they're thinking? Trying to just say, SolidWorks come a long ways. 2014 is a pretty legit release. I think still significantly slow. Does anybody want to talk about patterns or top-down design? One of the things that makes Creo so powerful is how it handles large assemblies. So prior to 2014, it was really easy to beat up on SolidWorks for large assemblies. They one argument I got into, this paint the stereotype engineer drinking a Mountain Dew with long hair, said that he's been an expert in SolidWorks since 1997 and that it handles large assemblies just fine. And I kind of laughed, and sometimes I get myself in trouble. My father told me my mouth would get me in trouble, and I certainly do. I said, well, probably my definition of large assemblies is very different than yours. Well, I do 500 parts all the time. I was like, every satellite that goes into space has no less than 25,000 components. And you're saying 500 is big? Around 2014, SolidWorks released a package to handle larger assemblies. And to me, that's 19 years late. All right, I get it. I don't know. I know SolidWorks better than most people. I teach a really mean SolidWorks class. I don't mean to sound like I'm knocking it. It's just, it's a little late, don't you think? All right, so let's play with top-down design for a quick second. All right, I'm trying to think of an example. All right, so I'm just going to create a very simple model and I don't know, maybe shell it. Reorder it, put draft on it. Okay, so I'll just make my draft hinge this datum. Redefine that and add it to the other jump. So that's one thing too. SolidWorks will let you do this type of stuff now. If I right click, with one more click, but I'm not a counter like that. I can select the other side. SolidWorks lets me do that, but I never see anybody do it. This was new in Creo's Wildfire 2. This was new, what I'm getting ready to show you. What's that, 20 something years ago? If you hover over one of these edges and right click once, it grabs all 4 edges. All right, SolidWorks doesn't do that. And how does that help, right? How is that helpful, right? So if I redefine this sketch and change it in some way, here, I'm just going to add something, power trim this out of here. Check out of it. It added rounds to all the other edges. And if I don't have enough room, it's going to have a problem with that. Now the rounds pop in. That's seed and boundary, right? There's my shell going backwards. I'll just redefine my draft to go the other way. Oh, maybe we should have tried to get the draft to work in a seed and boundary kind of way. I don't know. Let's just flip the arrow. All right, so if I want to make a cavity out of this to make a chocolate tray, I've been teaching classes at candy companies a lot lately. What would I do? I have to make a cavity, a mold, right? A tray, right? So a terrible name to the file, so I'm just going to change it a little bit. candy, for lack of a better word. I'll save that file. Then I'm going to save as a copy on top of it and call it candy tray. Spelled it wrong. And then let's build an assembly out of that. So I go assemble. I mean, I could talk about problems in SolidWorks for at least 5 days. All right, so there's my my candy. Right hold down, default constraint. That was new in Wildfire 2. SolidWorks just hit the checkbox, and they don't know the difference between F for freeze or F for float. Creo puts a box in front of it to tell you that it's packaged. SolidWorks puts an F. Not one person I've ever seen cares. The difference is SolidWorks happens to put it frozen at the default coordinate system. I particularly need to see it locked to the default coordinate system. A slight difference between the typical ME that should be rather have anxiety if it's floating, right? Completely constrained. Now I'm going to assemble the tray. Whoops, I hit assembly by accident. I meant to I reached for in session by SolidWorks doesn't have in session as well. That's kind of a weird coming from Creo. All right, so two things on top of each other. I'm going to grab the tray. And delete. I meant to call this the base. So what I'm going to do is go here to this first sketch and then draw the mold base. Tray works too. All right, whatever big, however many cavities in the mold there are. So this is the mold base. All right, and there's the draft, the rounds. I'm deleting all that. I just did this to get my orientation just right. So there's my part in there. I'm going to create a cavity, but I'm going to delete this out. I just wanted to have it in the right orientation. I didn't save any of that stuff because I'm going to fetch all that geometry using top-down design and literally build a mold. And my goal is to show you what SolidWorks doesn't do. And if I can explain why that's a big deal, because I like SolidWorks. I get paid by the hour, and it takes me weeks to make changes where Creo doesn't fail at all. That's kind of where I'm going with it. I didn't publish any geometry. I'm not going to go the published geometry route, but I probably should with my time remaining. That's another thing SolidWorks doesn't do, is it doesn't let me pick and choose precisely what I want to publish out. I call this the holistic teamed approach, because managers want me to hurry up, right? And they want to throw people at a project, and someone with less experience often screws the project up. But if I publish things out, it's really easy for them to not screw anything up, right? So I'm going to activate this guy. I didn't publish anything, so there's no publishes at the bottom, but that's where I should be. I probably should have just done it anyway. I'm going to go to copy geometry. Actually, let me do the publish. That's probably the smartest way to do it. So I'm going to open up my candy, right? And I'm going to left click, right hold down, and pick all the solid surfaces. That's the part SolidWorks doesn't do. And I'm going to hit Control C, Control V to copy that surface. Another thing SolidWorks doesn't do, if I want to copy just the bottom surface, I could use Shift Select to delineate precisely where I want to control the grass as it grows across my geometry. SolidWorks doesn't do that. I mean, Control A will let you select all the surfaces, but it's not dynamic. If I change the model, it'll update until there's a hole in it. I'm going to demonstrate. Right, so I come over here. I meant to publish that thing. Give me a few seconds longer. So if I pre-select, I right-click, quilt shows up. I got published in my pop-out window because we do this a lot. That one's published, and we want to call it, am I in Creo 7? I think I am. I'm in a project in Creo 7, so I meant to be in Creo 11. The reason I know I'm in Creo 7 because it didn't automatically push my publish into a footer. I'm just going to call this cavity and right hold down and move to footer. Right now I come over here, activate the tray, go copy geometry. Notice there's no picture popping up. Your coworker doesn't know what they're looking at anyway. All they need to know is that there's a cavity at the bottom. Okay, and I think I built this the wrong direction, didn't I? I think I made my draft the wrong way on my part. So let's go make some changes to it. Sorry to run out of time here. Yep, I'm just gonna delete. Let's see. I think all I got to do is this. Redefine. That's another cool thing is I could redefine. All I have to do is make sure that the publish is cool and nothing fails in my other geometry. I call this a timestamp. So I can redefine that and do kind of whatever I want to it. Like pick somewhere, shift select, or pick somewhere, shift select, and it fetches everything else. Here, I'll just redefine the shell to go up here. It didn't fail. It's pretty amazing. And if you know how it works, you go to insert for this timestamp. That's a design engine trick for our advanced assembly courses, especially when you're doing plastic parts and co-injected rubber and it gets really complicated. We want people to be able to make intelligent changes to the model. Look, the copy just automatically updates and the footer's going to update. I didn't make the cavity over here yet, but I was getting a little mixed up on my mold base here, but let's fix that. Okay. Now I'm in the mold base. So all I have to do now is just right click through and grab that surface and hit solidify in a cut direction. And there's my cavity, right? Now let's go make some changes to it and see it automatically update. So two things: publish, keeps the geometry nimble. SolidWorks, if you do a wiring harness and you need some geometry in your harness to route around, you take the entire aircraft. That's a bit aggressive. In Creo, I just pick some of the surfaces near the fuel tank because I know I'm routing wires down the wing. So it's very, very, very different to think about. You know, so I can hide that copy. All right, let's go make some changes to it and I'll be done. So I just go in here and whatever I'm doing, I'm just going to cut something out of it. My hope is that the surface automatically updates. That's the part SolidWorks doesn't do. Okay, I'm just going to turn that to a cut. The shell does what it sees. The copy automatic. Look, that didn't fail. All I have to do is make sure that this copy matures into this without any failure. The cut's going to automatically work. SolidWorks, you got to go and kind of pick on stuff and realize that the surface has got holes in it because it doesn't dynamically update. Does anybody have any thoughts, concerns, questions? I could talk about this stuff for hours.
Yeah, we probably should wrap it up. Got time for maybe one question if there's something there in the chat. I don't know if you.
Yeah, it was just Ben
Okay.
from Generac saying he's